So I'm going to do a case study on how we beat a high pressing 4-3-3 and how we did that with a 3-4-2-1. That was certainly in possession. Out of possession we were more 5-4-1 or 5-3-1-1. But I'm going to show you how we beat a high pressing side that had a little bit of qualitative superiority. And so we're going to show you how we manipulated this, how we gained our edges, how we gained supremacy in certain areas of the football pitch. So initially you can see the opposition's high pressing in a 4-3-3. So we've got a 3v3 in the first line. 4v3 if we include the goalkeeper, but we're going to back ourselves in this. We work a lot on build-up play. We've got good ball retention players within our back line, so we're going to back ourselves in a 3v3, 4v3 situation, but at times as well we're also going to look to one of our holding midfielders in to try and gain a numerical supremacy so that we can outplay the first line of pressure or the first chain. In terms of the second chain of pressure, we know the opposition have got a man-orientated midfield 3, so we're going to look to implement a boxed 4 with 2 number 10s and 2 holding midfielders against them, so that we essentially create numerical supremacy of 4 versus 3. And if these guys want to press high in a front 3, we're going to gain 2 versus 1 against the opposition's fullback on a regular basis if we can outplay that first line of pressure in here. One of the other major advantages to doing this is that it forces us to play the ball more centrally. So when fullbacks or wingbacks have the ball, they can encourage more to circulate the ball in central areas, which will allow us to switch the play and bring our 2v1s into play, but also bring our number 10s into play. And our objective within this is if they're pressing high in here, we're going to try and maximise the 2 versus 1s in here, and we're going to try and cause the opposition's fullback a problem with our 10s. Do they get drawn into our number 10 so that they're matched up in midfield? Of in which case we want our wing-backs on the outside being spare players playing aggressively. Of course, if they don't go with them and they match the run of our wing-back, then we're hopefully going to have our best players between the lines. Or if we draw a centre-back in, we're going to have a 1v1 with our striker, who our striker is probably the best striker in the league in fairness, so we're going to have supremacy in that sort of area of the football pitch. Equally, the opposition may withdraw and draw their wingers back, especially if we're getting dominance, but if they do, we're going to get 3 versus 1 in these areas, and we're going to encourage any of our backline players to step into midfield. So initially we're going to be 3-4-2-1 in possession. As we progress up the pitch, it will become a more 3-2-5, and then if the opposition withdraw, we're saying to our players one of the backline can step into midfield now because we only need a 2 versus 1 in the backline, and so therefore we will become essentially a 2-3-5 in those scenarios. In terms of the opposition's dead ball situations, we're going to seek to press high. We don't see the opposition as an incredibly strong build-up side, so we're not going to put a lot of numbers into this. We're going to use one striker who we think will be able to control and split the pitch in half so he can gain numerical supremacy in certain localities. So we're going to allow for the first pass. We're going to come around and try and cut off the switch of play using just a solitary striker in this scenario, and we're aware of where the problems are from this. So from in here, the central midfielders is the ones that we want to lock down, so we're going to give freedom to one of the number 10s sort of come and pick up the holding midfielder. If the centre-back looks to step on, we're going to engage quite high up the football pitch, just once they get past the 18-yard box. And if so, we're going to use the wing-backs to press opposition's full-backs where they can do. Now in those scenarios, the wide centre-backs have to come and become full-backs. This is where you're going to leave yourself weak in the back line. So as within a pendulum swing, the far side of wing-back needs to balance and make it a back 4. So you can see in and around the line of the ball, there's 3 versus 2. We know the opposition's spare player is the far side of centre-back, so we're going to use our number 10 here to go in between in a half and half position, so that, and also they're going to position themselves for the counter-attack where they're going to be able to exploit any split centre-backs. So you can see we're 3 versus 2 in and around the ball, or you can argue we're kind of 5 versus 3, 5 versus 4 in this half the football pitch. When we can't apply pressure on the ball, we're going to ask the team to set up in a central block, and we're going to have the defensive line about 5 yards south of the centre circle, and we're going to have our striker perhaps just inside the centre circle, in and around the halfway line. You can see here verticality around 22 metres between all teams, and horizontally, if the ball was neutral in a central position, everybody would be within the width of the half space, within the width of our own penalty box. If the opposition's holding midfielder starts to drop in between the centre backs or drop in behind our block in order to pick up the ball, we're okay with this because it's going to mean we're 10 versus 7 within our set-up block. We know one of the vulnerabilities of this setup is that there'll be a lot of space for the opposition's fullbacks, but we're okay with this because they're in the wide areas of the football pitch. They're not penetrating through central zones. It's easy for us to slide across in our horizontal shifts with the numbers that we have in order to make sure that we're not dominating scenarios. You can see that the number 10s are blocking off the half space lanes, and you can see the compactness of 8 to 10 metres between all red shirts within this. I want you to notice that in the 5-4-1, the widest players are the wing-backs so that they can get out wide and engage. Okay, will engage opposition's fullbacks, providing their wide centre-back can go with them. But you can see the midfield 4 is very much lies compact, preventing any access through the middle of the pitch. The wide, the number 10s, the wingers, or whatever you want to refer to them as, are narrower than our own wing backs. We're quite happy to set up in a low block and play a more counter-attacking system. It certainly complements our defenders, who are a little bit slow. We have the right players in midfield to do this, and the wing-backs with the energy. One of the problems of this system, though, is picking up the opposition's holding midfielders, who can often become spare in a pocket, a bubble of space. So the ways we might overcome this is to use the striker to press from the blind side. Okay, or when they do get free and spare, we're going to ask our 10s to really narrow up to ensure they can't penetrate centrally or through half spaces where their 10s are going to play, and hopefully that will force the play out wide. Once the play does go out wide, it will be a little bit easier to go into a 5-3-1-1 setup. We're never going to get dominated numerically in the back line as well, by the way, because we've got back five. So that's never going to be too much of a problem. We're never going to struggle with the horizontal shifts because of the numbers that we've got in here. So here's where we can perhaps either, again, use the striker to be in either a half and half position, because we have to have a plan to provoke the switch. We certainly can't just let the opposition keep doing it. So yeah, these players can engage if they're close enough, using press cover balance principles, but here is where we can use the far side 10 and take a risk and go and overload the ball side of the football pitch. From a counter-attacking point of view, one of the strengths of this system is its central presence. So when you do win the ball back, your free players are often between the lines as 10s who are creative, who can be face up. They're in a 1v none situation, so it's not like they're playing up against the back line coming in where they've got to play with their back to play and they're drawing a player in. They are very much going to be spare players in half spaces, and they're going to be your creative players who are going to hurt the opposition. So we can see in this first example, these are our three players that are building up, and we can see their wide forward, their striker, and perhaps just off there is their left forward, so that's their front three. We can see a holding midfielder coming in who's got pulled away from their man orientated sort of press. So we've got numerical supremacy, arguably 5 versus 3. So we can see in example number 2, we have a player just off camera down here, where this player is looking to engage. We have the central midfielder much tighter to our central midfielder now, but because this winger has got sort of pulled back by our wing back, we do still have a spare player, so we do still have numerical supremacy of 4 versus 3 if we can find the target player and work it out for ourselves in this situation. In this example, we're defending in a low block. You can see we've got our number 10 coming out across and helping to pick up a holding midfielder. You can see what we're saying about creating a player free between the lines. When we win it back here, there you go, dropped, and she's face up and able to play, and our creative players are there. Unfortunately, we're just offside on that occasion. We encouraged our players within the system, particularly from the back line, to try and be creative. Again, we're trying to manipulate a man-orientated midfield 3. So if their midfield 3 are looking to press and sort of go man for man against our midfield, can we cause them a problem? So you can see in little examples like this, where one of the defenders is looking to move on into a little pocket of space, and we're pulling away from them to try and cause them problems. Are they going to come in and press? Okay, and if they do so like this, we should be able to create spare players down the side and drag them out, and you can see my wing-back's a spare player in this example. If I pause it here, you can see the spare man in midfield, whose job is to cause the right-back a problem. And again, we're looking to create 2v1s with the wing-back given a lot of license to play very, very aggressive. They put 4 across the edge of the box. So because they're putting 4 now in across the edge of the box and it's numerically matched up, we know that our wing backs will be free and that we will have a natural 2v1. So we can hit the 10 or we can hit the wing back. And there's your spare player again between the lines playing face up. Here you can see an example of us defending in a central block, and because midfielders are dropping behind the line of our central block, it's a 10 versus 7. Could do with being a little bit more tighter vertically there for me. There's a little bit more space between the lines than I'd like, but you can see here there's no easy passing options and we're blocking off the vertical quite well. Here we can see an example of our pressing, curving round from the side. The number 10 can press the full-back in this situation because she's quite deep, so our wing-back here you can see is not high enough up the pitch to really engage their opposition's full-back. They're kind of in flat lines here, our opposition, which makes them a little bit easier to press. As things stand, we've got 3 versus 2 in and around the ball, arguably. You could say it's 3v3 if you include the opposition's goalkeeper, but the strikers are applying pressure from the side. So it's 3 versus 2, and there you go, there's the spare player to win that ball back for us. That we're starting to dominate now a little bit and create openings. So as we pause here, you can see it's 3 for 3, but we back ourselves, we back our back three to be able to outplay and dominate 1v1s. So we know we're getting spare players in the wing backs where we can get 2v1s. We know on both sides, or there's going to be a number 10 free somewhere in the midfield where we're looking to ideally play centrally if we can do. Look, they're trying to play. We couldn't find the wing back on that occasion on this side, but again, because we can break through the pressure, we find the wing back now on this side. We're about to see our tactics sort of work for us here. As we're keeping the ball here, you can see that our number 10 has attracted the right back and is just peeling off into a little bit of space to create that 4 versus 3 in central midfield and try and hopefully create an overload on the far side. And you can see there the wing back, because the opposition's wide forwards are trying to press high and engage our back three, it's allowing her a lot of the time to play goal side. And because we're manipulating the right back, or left back rather, sorry, into drawing into our number 10 as a spare person, narrowing her up, we're now creating that little bit of space for her to make that run, and we brought it back to 1-1, and this is about 5 minutes before half time, so a very good time for us to score. And at this point now we've started to take control of the game. Our little numerical supremacy edges all over the pitch is just starting to take effect. And you can see here again that we create the spare play between the lines because the fullback doesn't go with this time, so now we've got that fourth central midfielder playing through. This time the fullback does go with to try and be tight, but we've got that ability with our creative number 10s, and we're getting in behind the back line. We can start to see here that the opposition is starting to adjust. So you can see now they're not necessarily, the wide players are dropping and retreating more now. So now we're going to be able to play out from the back a lot easier if this continues, because we're going to have a lot of numerical supremacy in here. These players are going to be able to step into midfield a little bit more. We won't get the 2v1s necessarily on the fullback as much, but we will be able to force our opposition perhaps to stay into a low block and be able to work the ball into the final third a lot more, like on this occasion. So as we can see in the very next example that we try and play out from the back, we can see now that it's very, very easy for our defenders. We've only got one pressing striker, there's rotations now able to take place. We can comfortably, try and draw the opposition into 1 or 2 bad pressers. We can try and manipulate their man markers, just move the ball around and rotate, because we can bring the ball up and hopefully again circulate the ball through central areas, work the ball into the final third, which is, the first stepping stone to a bit of success. From the resulting throw, you can see examples again where we've got a lot of strong central presence, free plays through the middle, but also, like I said, any of our back line now, because we're pinning them back a lot more, because they're not pressing as high, you can see the numerical supremacy, and you can see that our defenders can now step into the midfield line. You can see our number 5 here is a wide centre back, is free now to go and roam into midfield and try and create. And from the corner, we go 2-1 up. Again, it's 3 versus 1 here in the press, although the opposition are going to start to obviously chase the game, so we know they're likely to go back to 3 or 4 players pressing, but as it stands, you can see the spare player here is the centre-back because the wing is now going back. And we're fortunate that our centre-backs here are good ball players, so they've still got good range of passing and you can see our number 10 has got free of the marker there, being a spare person, and we nearly score again there. So the opposition's adjust by dropping their wingers off. The spare players have now become our wide centre-back. In this situation now, we're sitting in a deep block. We can counter-attack. We can go back to looking for our 10s and our 9s when we break, really blocking off central avenues, and this is a coach's dream, because we win the ball back here, we play to our 10s, we're counter-attacking, and like I said, they've got the creativity and the skill, and we've got the best 9, we say, in the league. And this, as far as the counter-attacking team goes, 3-1. You don't score many finer goals than that.